Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears crossing over to answer the burning question, whose rebuild is going better? Welcome to a crossover episode on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into a crossover episode of the Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears podcast. Vikings fans, Bears fans, hello. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being hashtag everydayers, listening to your respective shows every single day. And hey, why don't you check out the other one every once in a while? Can't hurt. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So, Lauren, I had this idea roughly a half an hour ago to do a crossover with you because the Bears and Vikings have been in lockstep since 2022. They both hired new GMs, new head coaches. They drafted their quarterbacks a couple years later. They both inherited quarterbacks and then had their various, we'll say, tribulations getting out from those situations or deciding whether or not they wanted to continue with those situations. Both teams really had a decision there to make of do they want to keep going with the guy they inherited? Are we going to draft somebody? They made the same decision at the same time, drafted somebody at the same time. And so there's all these different angles we can look at. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Ryan Poles, Kevin O'Connell and now Ben Johnson and how the head coaching compares. Of course, Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy in the same draft class. We're going to play Monday Night Football right away, settle the score. But first I want like the 10,000 foot view. Lauren, how do you feel the Bears rebuild is going in the most broad and general sense?
First of all, I'm just glad the first question wasn't about Caleb Williams telling ESPN that he wanted to play for the Minnesota Vikings, because that's
I wasn't going to bring that up, but thank you for doing that yourself, because now I don't look like the bad guy. I can speak to this a little bit. So everybody wants to play for the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell just has that reputation. Joe Flacco called the Vikings. Aaron Rodgers wanted to play for the Vikings. Everybody wanted to, and everybody in that draft wanted to as well. He just came off that way in interviews. That is, to me, not that crazy of a draft picks, especially when you look like you're going to the worst team in the league because they're drafting first overall. It's like a thing that often happens, right? And even though the Bears, I know it was the Panthers pick, but it was still, there's still a reputation there for never having a 4,000. I mean, they got a Pope before a 4,000 yard passer, right? Like, well, I get it. Okay. I get it, but it's very much going to be a bygone a year later.
Yes.
Weird that it's coming out now. It's weird that it's allowed to come out now. That's what I was like stunned about.
And all of that is to answer your question of how's the rebuild going. That's how the rebuild's going. Like it's been going well, but there's always been those little bumps along the way of there's doubts here, there's questions there, but overall I think there's this feeling like that and everything that has come with it is behind the Bears, and that the addition of Ben Johnson and the changes that he has made organizationally make this feel like something is different, that it hasn't just been the same old Bears doing it the same old way, but Ben Johnson kind of revolutionizing. But from a Chicago standpoint, it feels like revolutionizing. From the rest of the NFL, it's maybe more like catching up to the 21st century. But nonetheless, there's this feeling like this is how big boy football teams operate now, and that this is as good of a chance as this team's had in a long time to feel like it's really going in a positive direction.
So what are those changes? Is it staff? Is it like operation stuff? Is it like more behind the scenes and we don't really know? What kind of what's the nature of that?
Yeah, so it started with just the hiring of Ben Johnson itself, with the way that they kind of said screw it, instead of messing around and having all these different big panels of ownership was involved in a lot of previous coaching hires. Like, they identified Ben Johnson and said, let's go get this guy. We're not going to drag it out. Like, it was the first time the Bears got like the candidate that everybody else wanted. And with Ben Johnson in the building, there's been this extra level of communication, of discipline, of not just saying the right things and sounding nice at press conferences, but like players saying like, wow, this is a different level than we've had to deal with before. And players like asking for that, wanting to be coached harder and feeling like they're getting things explained to them in ways that they hadn't really heard before, and that there's this demand at practice that they haven't really felt before. Like it has been the way they describe it sounds a little bit like the ways they describe Bill Belichick New England Patriots. Not that it's that militaristic, but there's just this holy moly.
He's like he's a bit of a hothead. Like this is known, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a little bit exaggerated because you're coming from like the regime, the organization that employed Matt Eberflus and Lovie Smith. Like this team has always liked soft-spoken head coaches that don't shake the boat too much, but Ben Johnson's not afraid to speak up and get a little heated. And so like, he's not, out of this world. This is not Jim Harbaugh going, people going like really ballistic on the sideline. It's just like more than the zero that they've been usually getting out of head coaches.
There was a story coming out of OTAs about Ben Johnson like lighting into somebody like on the first day, right? Was that Caleb or was that somebody else?
Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet, yeah. And it's okay. Here's the tone. We're actually like a football team here. There is a fascinating thing with the Bears, and I think it's maybe the like from the 10,000 foot view, the key difference where the Vikings and Bears are on total opposite sides of the spectrum. The Vikings super value synchronicity with their sort of like triumvirates. They want to essentially GM and head coach are attached at the hip. They had this with Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer. Now they've just extended Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to resync him with Kevin O'Connell. They really value these guys being in the same kind of vision, right? And everybody throughout the history, every head coach has kind of had their quarterback within a year or two of getting there. And this is as long as we've waited, really. I mean, first year, Mike Zimmer drafts Teddy Bridgewater. First year, Brad Childress gets Tavares Jackson. I mean, you could go all the way down the line, and pretty much everybody's got their guy. And the Bears, on the other hand, have basically never had that thing like fully synced. They tried to have it in 2022 when they hire Eberflus and Poles at the same time. But even that, you're inheriting the quarterback, the last guy drafted. And then you go back to Matt Nagy and Trubisky, and you go back through those things. So I feel like there is this, there are two main philosophical differences. One is that sort of organizational thing where the Bears have been a little bit more satisfied to like kind of try to isolate and surgically pick out, okay, you're the problem with the org, take you out, replace you with Ben Johnson. Now it's there. But will we, if the Bears falter again, will we be having the conversation? Okay, it's Ryan Poles, take him out, put a new GM in there. Are we going to do that? And will that keep going? That's like the philosophy, right? Where it's like, we don't need to overhaul and nuke everything at once. Let's take out one thing and replace it and ship a Theseus this till it works. Whereas the Vikings, they had a problem in 2021 and they said, we're clicking the button. I find that interesting. And I think that's been my main critique of the Bears has been that they don't have that synchronicity. So I don't agree with them on it, but I at least see like the point. And then the other difference is the Bears were way more aggressive about rebuilding. I'm not going to say tanking because that's Stephen Ross is not walking through that door. Like I'm not going to call it that, but it was a strong rebuild. It was pulling this together. I actually just had an episode on with a guy named Hayden who did a YouTube video on tanking that I really, really liked. And I talked to him about it. And I think Bears fans would actually like it. The Bears come up a little bit in that and how they represent rebuilding, which is very distinct from, 84 Rockets losing on purpose. We need a lottery. Like, no, you're just pulling your team apart and you're saying it's okay that we're going to win 4 games this year. And the Vikings are not willing to do that, to very much criticism. A lot of people in Minnesota are very critical of the fact that the Vikings will not let themselves get a top 10 pick, that you can't be that team. Super interesting stuff. That's my spiel on the difference in philosophy, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're pretty spot on with both of those. The Bears have publicly kind of recognized that, hey, like, we don't want to keep doing this QB coach cycle. And that's why it felt so detrimental when they retained Matt Eberflus heading into drafting Caleb Williams. Like, there's not hindsight for a lot of Bears fans that wanted to fire Matt Eberflus at that time. And they said, no, we trust this guy. We're going to bring him back and then fire him halfway through the next season. Like that's where this rebuild has been so bumpy, and where there's hope that Ryan Poles, Caleb Williams, and Ben Johnson are now all kind of, they're not aligned in terms of when they started, but I think their fates are aligned in that if things don't work out, they'll probably all go together. It's hard to see a scenario where they're good enough that Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams stays, but Poles gets fired, or any combination of like either they're all going to be good enough together, or they're all going to go together, and then in theory from then that would be a complete give up on the current rebuild and that failed, and then you can kind of restart with everybody on a similar timeline.
And I want to hone in a little bit more on Poles and Kwesi. Though that is a debate, like a real debate that people will have, and we can dive into some of the ins and outs of it, as well as what the future holds for these two franchises. That'll be next here on a crossover episode of the Locked On Vikings and Locked On Bears podcasts. This special little crossover is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The finals will start eventually. And if you want to get in on a little bit of gambling there, or get in on some baseball or some futures, Vikings and Bears and Packers all kind of packed around each other in NFC North odds and in various Super Bowl things. So whatever you think is going to happen here, you can even go to FanDuel and gamble on the exact finishing order of the NFC North. So if you want to do that, you can find that on FanDuel. Whatever it is, if you catch your first $5 bet, if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. So go to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet on anything. It can be on the most, the easiest favorite in the world. It can be on something like the Chiefs to make the playoffs. And assuming that happens, you could win $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving right along here with this crossover episode, Lauren, let's get into the GM thing. We had a talker on the Minnesota Football Party earlier that was like the worst trade in the last decade for the Vikings, and debating what was the worst one. And it got me thinking about like, if you like the worst thing Kwesi has done. We debated about this a little bit. But whatever it was, it happened in the 2022 draft. I think it happened on day 2 when they traded up for Andrew Booth. Most people would probably tell you it was day 1 when they traded down and then they picked Lewis and traded past Kyle Hamilton. Probably the worst move made there, at least so far, right? If JJ McCarthy's a turbo bust, then it's that. But as we understand right now, that's probably the thing that that's the thing that Kwesi himself regrets the most. He's gone up on the podium and been like, yep, missed on that one, guys. Like he's not even defending it. What's that answer for Ryan Poles?
I mean, at this point, it's got to be the Chase Claypool trade.
It's got to be Chase Claypool, right? Yeah.
And he's been pretty forthcoming about that being a mistake, right? They were pretty quick to move on from Chase Claypool, right? That's one of the things that I hope Bears fans have been able to properly appreciate about Ryan Poles is, yes, he makes mistakes for sure, but he hasn't been one of those GMs that makes the mistake and then doubles down on it and compounds it and holds on to this player because he wants to be able to prove himself right. Because I'm the smart GM. It's like, no, I screwed that one up, and you try and learn from it and get better. And doesn't mean they don't make future mistakes, but at least you feel like there's a humility and a self-awareness that comes with it.
Yeah, and I think about the skill groups of the Bears that have come around, and I'll be honest, I'm still a little bitter because the Bears got a lot of credit for being the best rookie QB destination ever, and it turned out that the rookie QBs did not want to go there. That was always weird to me, but I get it because there was this reputation. Oh, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. There's name value to it, and then it just didn't translate into regular value last year. And the hope is that was an issue of coaching, and now that's been solved, right? But when it comes to finding that vision, I have maybe I just don't follow the Bears closely enough, and you can answer this question super cleanly to me. I've never really understood the vision of the Bears, of what Ryan Poles is trying to build right now. What kind of team is it? Is it a shot play team like Miami? Is it a ground and pound team like Detroit? Is it what kind of team is it? And Shane Waldron not having a great answer to that was a big reason that he got fired midseason of his first year. What is it now?
I think there is still some aspect of figuring that out. And I'll say bigger picture for Ryan Poles, and then we'll come back to Ben Johnson's answer to that. But bigger picture for Ryan Poles, I think he's been in this position of, I'm building for a future window in 2 to 3 years, not so much of a window of now. They're really transitioning now into a shorter term window.
Yeah, that was the thought in 2022, which we are now should be entering, is that.
Yeah, exactly. And so the strategy was always kind of let me build flexibility. Let me give myself options. And I think with that, you lacked some identity there, but it was like, let me get the veteran receiver in Keenan Allen and draft Rome Odunze so that I've got the veteran, I've got the young guys. So if one doesn't work out, like I've got short and long-term options there. Let me get young guys and veterans on the offensive line. Let me get different players in the backfield, young guys and veterans. So it was like, he kind of always had like, if one thing didn't work, I've got another option here to kind of tide me over. But we're getting to the point now where it's like they need to just hone in on what they are. And I think the theme that we're coming out of this year is like they want a lot more yards after catch. They want to be a team that can put playmakers with the ball, and it doesn't have to be they want to be able to take deep shots with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze especially. But like I think they want to be able to have a more effective pass game scheme from a route concept standpoint to get playmakers the ball with some space in front of them and let Colston Loveland run, let Luther Burden run, let DeAndre Swift run, and hope that play calling and scheme sets that up and that the offensive line can be good enough to have the quarterback be in a position to get the ball there and let the playmakers make plays.
It's the perfect Bo Nix offense. You took the wrong quarterback. We all did.
Well, I think the idea is like that's the structure. And then when that's not there, because it's your, it's your first, second read, it's on. Then
yeah, you know in a second and a half that it's not there, and now we run around and we
exactly. Play. So you get the best of both worlds there. Like you build the easy stuff in for Caleb and let them make yards for him, and then when that's not there, then you let Caleb cook, and then you can get some big special plays on his own, and you kind of you get to maximize that playmaking while also giving him some of that structure to make sure he's not doing everything the way it felt like he had to last year.
I don't know if I can think of an offense in the NFL that was like that. I can think of college offenses, but that would be a fairly novel thing. Not that that's impossible or anything. New stuff happens all the time, but it's ballsy to go for that kind of novel thing.
It feels to me like what the 49ers wanted to do with Trey Lance. Like they had quarterbacks in the Shanahan offense that, you know, sure, they can run the scheme and Jimmy Garoppolo can throw the easy passes and keep things rolling, but like, let's go get the mobile guy who we think can do that easy stuff and expand from there. And so I think Ben Johnson sees Caleb Williams as like, I think he can do a lot of what Jared Goff did and add more playmaking ability that Goff didn't have. I think that's the hope there.
Did you listen to Jordan Rodriguez, the play caller series from a couple years ago?
I did not.
It's phenomenal. And the Trey Lance 49ers thing, they go into a lot of depth. And Kyle Shanahan talks really candidly about how he basically wanted a redo on Robert Griffin III with him. And so it was going to be a lot of running, which also feels like if you're going to have like, okay, the thing that Ben Johnson and that line staff did that was, I think, their pride and joy was diversity in run game installs. Everybody knew so many different things. It's a crazy feat of coaching to have everybody on the same page and have that much variety of things that you have access to, get them all installed in the limited time that you have in camp and stuff. And so if Ben Johnson can once again, and the staff that he's assembled in Chicago can do that again, then you add a QB running element that you don't have with Jared Goff. Maybe there's more to that Trey Lance thing. I think the answer to this for Minnesota has very much been just become the 2021 Rams. It's the Super Bowl season that Kevin O'Connell was coming off of when he got hired. They want exactly like that's the playbook that he has. It's obviously, evolved and shifted a little bit over time, as it always does, but it's very much, we want chunks, we want intermediate, we want to hit basics over the middle, we want 15, 20-yard passes basically all the time to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. One thing that they've prioritized a ton on the receivers is speed. Everybody is like a 4.42 or less. Everybody. There's just, and unless you're talking about like undrafted rookies, right? Like Jefferson might be the slowest guy in the room. Between Addison, Jalen Naylor, now Ty Felton, who's a crazy 40-time guy. Like, that's been a huge emphasis, which tells me maybe they're going a little bit like the Mike McDaniel direction too. But either way, it's about the big play. So it's, again, total opposite ends of the spectrum. Bears are going for, let's get 2 yards depth of target and let somebody cook with the ball. Vikings are trying to get it all in one bite with deep passing. A much more standard approach, I would say. But that sort of gets a little bit into the coaching. And I think if we want to compare the rebuilds, I simply must point out that the Vikings still have the head coach they hired in 2022, and the Bears have had to go through a different one. But how do you feel that reflects on Ryan Poles and the vision on the whole?
Yeah, I think key in that also is that they still have been able to retain Brian Flores too. Like to be able to have that teaching continuity from year to year has been so critical. And I think it's one of the things we overlook with like the Chiefs in particular, with teams having some of that long-term success. And that's been like that was the biggest thing about Ryan Poles heading into this offseason of like, is Poles going to keep his job? Should Poles be the GM that gets to hire the next head coach? It's like Poles. When the Bears hired Ryan Poles, they already had a finalist list of head coaches at the time for Matt Eberflus. They were down to like 3 coaches. Then they hired Ryan Poles and said, here's our list of finalists. And Ryan Poles has said he was given the option to open up the head coaching search again, but chose not to and chose Matt Eberflus himself and says, this is my coach. I'm sticking to this coach. So this is going to be my guy. And it's like, all right, you hitched your wagon to this. So do you not go down with that wagon? But I think there's a feeling like he got the best guy for Ben Johnson, and whether Ben Johnson works or not isn't necessarily going to be Ryan Poles' fault, because you're not going to blame, no one's going to look back and say, oh, they should have known, they should have hired this other coach instead, because this was the coach that everybody wants. So they're hoping that because Dennis Allen has been a head coach twice and failed, that he's not going to leave for a head coaching job anytime soon, and that they can start to build that kind of year over year continuity with offensive play caller and defensive play caller that the Vikings are enjoying.
So with that, we're entering what both of these teams hope is an extended window of contention. The rosters as they are, I tell me if you disagree, are the vision. The vision is here. This is what it's supposed to be. And we'll maybe make tweaks on the margins, but the next few years, this is what we hope is the thing. So that brings us to the question of who has the brighter future. And we can't answer that without talking about the young quarterbacks. That'll be next here on the Locked On Crossover. There is not much to say about JJ McCarthy. He has not played a game yet. It's still very much you're projecting off of whatever you thought the draft was. He spent basically the entire last calendar year rehabbing a knee, so he didn't even you can't even really be like, oh, but he's working on his throw. He hasn't really been. So we're gonna see what we get, and we'll have to revisit that conversation later. But this can be a lot about Caleb Williams, because if you talk about the future of the Bears is Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is the future of the Bears. He is the face of the franchise. He is everything to the franchise. If the Bears find great sustained success, it's because of Caleb Williams. I'm probably not off base there, right? Like, he is so central to everything now.
Yeah, yes, 100%. I find myself, as you were setting up this conversation, is like, this is something I've been thinking about with the Bears, is like, is everybody else good enough? And I suppose if your quarterback is truly great, everybody else matters a bit less. But like, the Bears are right in this transition period of like going from building for the future to like building for now, where now they're locked in with their starting 5 offensive line are going to be here for the next few years. The receivers are going to be, these are going to be the receivers. Like, this is going to be the defensive line. And like, there's a few spots on this roster that I'm like, these are the guys they're rolling with, and you hope that better coaching makes them better players. But I've got real question marks about, like, is Montez Sweat that guy to be the bookend pass rusher with Dio Dengbo on the other side? At the linebacker positions, are Edmonds and Edwards good enough to be special on that side? And offensive line, like their left tackle and their right guard, like, do they have the players that they're locking in on right now? Are they good enough? And I think coaching is probably going to be the difference maker there. But if Caleb Williams is able to elevate to this elite quarterback level, then you can raise level of play of otherwise average or mediocre players and make them better than they are.
Yeah, I find this scheduling really interesting. They've picked a really good year, I think, to put Vikings-Bears week 1 on primetime because of exactly this. I would describe the Vikings roster really similarly. The O-line is basically set in stone now. These are your 5. Your skill players, Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, that trio's been in place. Now you've got your quarterback. Your offense is more or less, outside of maybe, they're going to have a different running back in a couple years or something like that, or a wide receiver gets hurt and you don't know who the depth is. But like, this is the offense. This is what it is. And there's more proof of concept to that. I think the Bears there's a little more projection that you have to do, because you don't know how year 2 Caleb to Rome Odunze is going to be, or what Colston Loveland's going to give you, or any of those things. But like, defensively, I have a lot of the same questions. Are we really going to go Isaiah Rodgers, CB2 every down? Or are we going to bring in some old guy again? Are we going to trade for Jalen Ramsey and hope he's still got something left in the tank? Are we going to continually do this all the time? So I don't think you can look at either of these rosters and say that they have created something that you would describe as complete. In the same way you would describe the Eagles as a complete roster, right? And then they go win the Super Bowl. But the vision is still mostly there. As it stands right now, look, it's June. Betting odds do not matter. But for whatever it's worth, FanDuel has the the Bears actually as 1.5 point favorites at home. I think the 3 points home field advantage thing is a little bit old school thinking. It's probably more like 1.5 or 2. I think this is more kind of saying we don't know which one of these rosters is better. I don't think that the Bears are getting that much help for being at home is I guess what I'm saying. I think they're getting a little more credit than that. But do you think right now, gut feeling, that what they have put together around Caleb Williams can be something that is, winning division titles, winning playoff games? We're talking about him in mid-January kind of team for the foreseeable future.
I think it's winning division titles is tough because of the rest.
It's what it's got to be though if you're rebuilding, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the Lions are good and yeah, Vikings and Packers are all, it's a tough division, but like the Bears weren't part of the conversation last year.
Sure.
Is this a world where they become part of that conversation? And if they lose the division on tiebreakers or whatever, it's like, you're not going to call the Bengals rebuilding. They still contend for the AFC North all the time, but the Browns.
So I think I'm right there where it's like I have enough confidence in this Bears roster developing into a group this season that can consistently win 10 games, like could push for that 10-11 win game type of window where they're playoff team in contention every year. But like I'm not sure this team is good enough to go beyond that. Like I think they need some other kind of boost. Like they need the young players to take big steps forward. They need some kind of something else to give them the juice. Like I think they can be right there in the contending conversation, not just this year, but like moving forward. Like I see this team as getting there, but like that next leap from there feels like it's still something beyond that missing. But they're close enough that I feel like in year one, this is an 8 or 9 win team that maybe can surprise you and get 10 or 11. And then, next year, 2026, they're a 10 or 11 win team that's really in that true contention. But I'm not sure, like, unless Caleb is a top 5, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen caliber quarterback, that they're into that, big conversation just yet.
So what does it take? Like, if you could pull at the threads of fate and make any player in the NFL disgruntled and get him traded to the Bears, is like, who's the answer that turns them from, hey, I think this team can be like respectable, to this is a Super Bowl contender and you should all put them in the top 3 of your NFC odds?
Yeah, it's not even necessarily like this outside player that you add to the roster, but it's like guys on the team right now that they need to be better, getting better. Like there's a path here where Montez Sweat gets back to being a 12-sack kind of pass rusher, and they signed Dio Dengbo from the Colts as a guy who they think his best football is still ahead of him and not behind him. He had 8 sacks 2 years ago, but like if he can be a true like bookend pass rusher, a 10-sack guy there, and then on the interior, like Jervon Dexter as a 2nd round pick a couple years ago, like if he could be a true difference maker on the interior, plus Luther Burden and Colston Loveland as pass catching weapons, if they can emerge as like really true dynamic threats in this offense, like the seeds are all there. You just need all of those seeds to grow, and I think. We know historically it's tough for any team to hit on all their young players, and especially the Chicago Bears are never going to hit on all of their young players. So I think I find myself looking around going, which one of these really critical young guys isn't actually going to be the solution? Which one isn't going to take the step forward? Because statistically, somebody's
going to not be enough. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I'm thinking like super pie in the sky kind of dreams, right? Like what if Jamar Chase gets really mad and then gets traded to the Bears? Do you not immediately look at that and go, oh, this could be something really, really real now?
I think like Chase, not specifically. I mean, of course he'd be an upgrade, but like I think of wide receiver as one of the strengths of the Bears team. So if you take a B,
what about like Max Crosby? Let's do a Raider to a Bears thing again. Let's get some parallels.
No, yeah, Crosby is the one. Like to me, it's a pass rusher, right? It's an edge rusher that elevates this team. That's the spot that I think can have the single most specific impact on making this team better right now. The spot that's thinnest and closest to like a weakness there that an elite player I think would absolutely add a win or win and a half to their win total.
Like it's the trade deadline, the Raiders are 2-6. Like people are getting mad. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of dream I'm trying to help, conjure.
Well,
I feel like for the Vikings, it's probably, a shutdown corner, but there's only ever like two of them in the league anywhere. So it's a pretty hard one where there's a lot of like premier edge rushers. And there's usually somebody pretty exciting in free agency where you could see like a good cap situation. Ryan Poles goes out and gets hashtag the guy.
But he doesn't have a good cap situation anymore. That's the thing. Like they've marked
Is it
position now where they don't have it anymore. They've got
even to the future
now, and next 2026 they're set to have 16 million in functional space as we stand today. Like
that's not bad. And I'm gonna guess a lot of that is in salary, not bonus, and it's all like malleable, right?
There's some wiggle room there, but
there's a ton of wiggle room. Your cap is great.
They can make.
I'm looking at it over the cap.
What they've got. They got one card left in the sleeve to pull out and say, Trey Hendrickson, here you go. Like that's all they got.
There you go. Okay, here's one. Is DJ Moore a Bear this time next year?
Yes, for sure. Almost. For sure. Cole Kmet, maybe not, but DJ Moore, yes.
Yeah, well, drafting a first-round tight end is probably not great news for him, his long-term future on the Bears.
More so about their contracts for both of them. DJ Moore just got a new extension, a lot of guaranteed money right now. They can't really get out of the deal for 2 years. Kmet, they can get out of after this year.
Got you. Oh, DJ Moore's pretty tradable.
Not right away, but it gets there.
Yeah. You can take like 16 mil debt if you do it right now, but if you do it post June next year,
okay.
You have basically no dead money.
DJ Moore has been pretty bought, and Cole Kmet will be too, but I think there's more a feeling like Cole Kmet's expendable, DJ Moore less expendable. They don't have a lot of great depth behind the top three at receiver right now.
And if you're trying to be like a yak team, yeah, DJ Moore is like exactly the kind of guy that you want. Here's what I'm looking at, I'm asking you a lot of questions because I'm trying my best not to be a homer here, but it feels to me like the way that the Vikings are built, and there's more proof of concept. They've won double-digit games 2 of the 3 years Kwesi's been at and Kevin O'Connell have been at the helm. That if JJ McCarthy, who's the biggest question mark, could be terrible, fantastic, and everything in between, if he is even okay, if he's just a little bit better than Nick Mullins, that this could be a team that contends. And if he's any good, Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, the Brian Flores defense, all these pieces come together, and suddenly you have this really, really dangerous team that is 1 September winning streak away from being nationally considered a true blue contender. And it feels like the Bears don't quite have that. It feels like you're describing a team with more of a ceiling than that, where a lot more of the vision needs to kind of come together to do that. And when you look at the strategies where the Bears sacrificed seasons, sacrificed years of guys' health, guys getting older, years of contracts, guys got more expensive to get to a place where, like, the way that you're talking about them reminds me of the way I would talk about Kirk Cousins' Vikings teams 3 years ago, where it was like, well, if everything breaks perfectly right, then maybe they can, they're probably a 10-win team, but they need to get really lucky to get past that. And I guess let's wrap this out. Prove me wrong. Make the case that the Bears rebuild has outdone the Vikings rebuild.
To me, that all hinges on the quarterback, because I think that the discrepancy I'm seeing here is like if we separate quarterback and everybody else, like quarterback and supporting cast here, I think the Bears quarterback has the higher floor right now because we just don't know what McCarthy is.
Caleb Williams, you've at least seen a year from him. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But I think the Vikings supporting cast has the higher floor. Like Bears supporting cast has the higher ceiling, perhaps. Well, I don't even know. I don't even know it's higher than the Viking ceiling, but like Bears supporting cast could be all over the place, just like JJ McCarthy could be all over the place. Whereas like I think Caleb's got this kind of smaller range of what he's going to do this year, and I think the Vikings supporting cast has this smaller range of what they're going to do this year. So to me, like Caleb Williams could have a good year, but the Bears could still end up being 9 or 10 win season. Whereas like the Vikings don't need as much from JJ McCarthy, respectively. So it's like I think in that sense the Vikings have done a better job rebuilding because they've put themselves in a position where their quarterback, it's there's no excuse, there's no nothing. It's pretty much all on him, and they can finally they can just see what they have in the quarterback. Whereas like for the 14th time in a row, the Bears are still like, well, quarterback we think is good, but there's still these other question marks about around the team. So is it his fault or is it the team's fault? Like, they haven't fully been able to eliminate that variable just yet. And I think this will be the closest that they've come to that, but I don't know that we'll eliminate all that in year one, because, well, it's still a first year under Ben Johnson. It's still, new receivers, and there's still going to be these but and ifs if there's some struggles from Caleb Williams.
Yeah, it's like delayed. It's, maybe in a couple years it's the thing. And it's, I remember once Peter talked about the Lions. This was 2020, which turned out to be apt. He said they were 2 years away from being 2 years away. And I think about that about the Bears a lot, where I think they're not 2 years away from being 2 years away. They're just the 2 years away now.
Yeah.
But because of the coach firing and stuff, that lagged things behind. But I do think at the end of the day, if Caleb Williams is the prince that was promised, like everybody has been saying he is since the draft, and JJ McCarthy is, the fifth QB off the board that year. And the difference in those two is like stark enough. I think that becomes the only argument the Bears would need is like, yeah, but our quarterback's better, and therefore this is going to be our team. But hey, these two teams play each other. They're in the same division. It'll all get settled. And by this time next year, we'll have a much clearer sense for how we feel about all these things. Lauren, thank you so much for giving some time. We went a little over, but you know what? You're welcome, everybody. Check out Locked On Bears, Vikings fans. Go listen to Lauren. Lauren's great. And Bears fans, you're always, of course, you are welcome. You can ask me questions and I'll answer them on Tuesdays if you want. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for listening. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.